as we go through the reverse of the Asian crisis, if the Asian crisis was a huge deflationary shock for the world, then what would the reverse Asian crisis be? I think it seems pretty obvious that it'll be a big inflationary shock for the world. And in that regards, I'd like to point out that if you think back of the crisis of 2008, the crisis of 2008 was a crisis of bust banks. Now, bust banks are always extremely deflationary. The 2020 crisis was not a crisis of bust banks, and banks have actually withstood the crisis quite well and are now, doing pretty well. So 2008 deflationary hit that we don't have today. Post 2008, we had tighter fiscal policy pretty quickly. You had the US Tea Party that froze government spending, UK austerity, EMU crisis. For now, you see no tightening of fiscal policy whatsoever. Post 2008, you had accelerating globalization. You had the G20, the creation of the G20. More importantly, you had China's response to the 2008 crisis was to unleash a wave of capital spending and infrastructure spending such as the world had never seen, which de facto brought roughly 500 million Chinese workers onto the global economy. Before 2008, if you were producing in China, it meant that you were producing in Shanghai or in Shenzhen. Post 2008, producing in China means that you could be producing in Zhengzhou, in Chongqing, or in Wuhan. Now, of course, post 2020, we now realize that the Wuhan price may not be as cheap as we once thought it was. And so now we're moving towards an accelerating globalization to basically reshoring of supply chains and to increase regionalization. Post 2008, you have a flat renminbi. Today, you have a strong renminbi. Post 2008, you have excess supply. Today, you have supply chain dislocations. So the investment environment basically could not be more different. Well, it could always be more different, but it's massively different today than it was in 2008. And so, as we sit here and we see inflation accelerating on the back of unprecedented fiscal and monetary policy, on the back of rising energy prices, food prices, metal prices, on the back of rising mortgage rates, surging shipping rates, higher lumber, low automobiles inventory, supply chain disruptions, etc. I'm left struggling thinking, where will the deflation come from? And if we don't get another deflationary hit, then the inflation environment could easily feed on itself, if only because of the very, very important policy shift in China. China is shifting its business model from a business model that was based on keeping its currency undervalued, embracing financial repression to capture the growing current account surpluses and recycling those into infrastructure spending so as to offer the world third world infrastructure at first world prices.